I just wish NFL players could find a way to protest without starting a national dialogue. Like so many Americans, I was shocked and disgusted when I first saw San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick sitting down for the playing of our national anthem as a protest against social injustice. In the weeks since, it seems like every time I turn on my TV to watch football, there are more and more NFL players sitting, kneeling, or raising their fists during the Star-Spangled Banner. And while I certainly respect the right of these players to protest, I just wish they could find a different way to do so that doesn't start any kind of national dialogue. Before I go any further, I want to make one thing clear: I completely understand that as African Americans, these players are frustrated with what they perceive as targeted police brutality against minorities. I realize that they are directly affected by racially motivated discrimination, unfair treatment, and institutional oppression. Believe me, I get it. But the bottom line is that there are other forms of demonstration that can draw attention to these issues without sparking a substantive and meaningful discourse across the country. Would that really be so hard? Part of what makes America so great is that our citizens have the freedom of speech. I'm all for these players or anyone else, for that matter, expressing their opinions, but once they start shifting the nation's focus to serious and pressing matters facing millions of people, that's where I draw the line. I'm sorry, but I don't believe in any so-called protest if it involves raising awareness of systemic problems within our society. Nobody wants that. As a proud American, I know I don't know, America is not perfect, and yes, there are challenges facing us as a nation that need to be addressed. But a big public spectacle that inspires collective self-reflection and a thoughtful examination of the country's morals is not the solution. Nor, I might add, is using fame and notoriety to start a conversation that tries to widen the perspectives of people from all different walks of life. Instead of going down on one knee or raising a fist during the anthem, can't these players stand up for what they believe in without creating a platform for the free exchange of ideas and differing points of view? I mean, isn't that and not an environment of honesty and empathy what we should be striving for? Though I admire their intentions, I hope that going forward, these men choose a different forum for their actions, ideally one that is totally out of the public eye and garners no national media coverage whatsoever. A sporting event is, frankly, not the time or place for anyone, least of all a bunch of millionaire professional athletes, to be making political statements, especially if those statements cause people to engage in introspection or mindful discussion. So to all the players around the NFL who have joined one another in protest, I would just say this: do what you feel is right. But please try to remember that when you make your point in front of that red, white, and blue flag, you're also forcing me as well as so many of your fellow Americans to think, consider the feelings of others, and act like a human being. Maybe Colin Kaepernick should think about that before deciding to kneel at the 49ers next game.
Morning on this football Sunday, where we are witnessing an extraordinary mixture of sports and politics.
Yeah, and it's not just football. Trump now at war with some of America's most popular athletes, including NBA stars LeBron James and Steph Curry.
Yeah, to put this all in context, it all started Friday night when the president used profanity to bash NFL players like Colin Kaepernick, who kneeled during the national anthem to protest social injustice against African Americans. But instead of backing down, the president is just doubling down. Just this morning on Twitter, he tweeted, quote, "If NFL fans refuse to go to games until players stop disrespecting our flag and country, you will see change take place fast. Fire or suspend."
However, today we are expecting many more players to join Kaepernick. This is a shot of the first game of the day, Ravens-Jaguars over in London at Wembley Stadium. And now the protest is spreading to baseball overnight. This is Bruce Maxwell from the Oakland A's taking a knee.
And of course, all of this is playing out against a backdrop of a new ABC News Washington Post poll showing 66% of Americans say that Donald Trump has done more to divide this country. Yet that poll also showing Trump's approval ratings have gone up slightly.
We have team coverage this morning, and we begin with ABC's Mary Bruce, who's at the White House. Mary, good morning to you.
Good morning. Well, the president this morning is picking a fight with two of the world's largest sports leagues and some of their most influential stars, and he is not backing down. Over the last 24 hours, he has added fuel to the fierce debate in this country over race, intolerance, politics, and sports. This morning, it's the president versus the players as Trump sparks a political war with professional sports. It started with this jab and profanity about football players like Colin Kaepernick, who kneeled during the national anthem to protest racial and social injustice.
Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of a off the field right now, out, he's fired. He's fired!
But the president didn't stop there, tweeting if a player wants the privilege of making millions of dollars in the NFL or other leagues, he or she should not be allowed to disrespect our great American flag or country and should stand for the national anthem. If not, you're fired. Find something else to do. The NFL fired back, saying divisive comments like these demonstrate an unfortunate lack of respect for the NFL. Strong rebuke from a league whose owners collectively donated more than $7 million to Trump's campaign. And it's not just football. Trump is taking on basketball, too, after NBA champion Steph Curry said he would vote against a Golden State Warriors visit to the White House.
I don't want to go. That's really good.
Trump then beat him to it, disinviting him, tweeting, going to the White House is considered a great honor for a championship team. Steph Curry is hesitating, therefore invitation is withdrawn. LeBron James's response, you bum, Curry already said he isn't going. Going to the White House was a great honor until you showed up. For the president who promised to bring the country together.
I think I'll bring people together.
Now he's again inserting himself into the debate over race in America. Now, all eyes will, of course, be on today's games. The president has encouraged fans to leave the stadium if players decide to kneel during the national anthem, while others are encouraging those players to take a knee now more than ever. Dan and Paula.
Mary Bruce at the White House kicking us off. Thank you.
Does the government work for us or do we work for the government? Tonight, what if the Constitution no longer applied? What if the whole purpose of the Constitution was to limit the government? What if Congress's enumerated powers in the Constitution no longer limited Congress, but were actually used as a justification to extend Congress's authority over every realm of human life? What if the president, meant to be an equal to Congress, has instead become a democratically elected, term-limited monarch? What if the president assumed that everything he did was legal just because he's the president? What if he could interrupt your regularly scheduled radio and TV programming for a special message from him? What if he could declare war on his own? What if he could read your emails and your texts without a search warrant? What if he could kill you without warning? What if Supreme Court justices no longer looked to the Constitution to determine the constitutionality of a law, but rather simply to what justices who preceded them thought about it? What if the rights and principles guaranteed in the Constitution have been so distorted in the past 200 years as to be unrecognizable by the founders? What if the 50 states were no longer sovereign entities, equals to each other, and parents of the federal government they voluntarily constituted? What if the states were mere provinces of a totally nationalized and fully centralized government? What if the Constitution was amended stealthily, not by constitutional amendments duly ratified by the states, but by the constant and persistent expansion of the federal government's role in our lives? What if the federal government decided if its own powers were proper and constitutional? What if the Constitution were no longer the supreme law of the land? What if you needed a license from the government to speak, to assemble, or to protest against the government? What if the government didn't like what you planned to say, and so it didn't give you the license? What if the right to keep and bear arms only applied to the government? What if posse comitatus, the federal law that prohibits our military from occupying our streets, were no longer in effect? What if the government considered the military an adequate dispenser of domestic law enforcement? What if cops looked and acted like troops and you couldn't distinguish the military from the police? What if you were not secure in your person, in your papers, and in your property? What if federal agents could write their own search warrants in defiance of the Constitution? What if the government could decide when you were and were not entitled to a jury trial? What if the government could take your property whenever it wanted? What if the government could continue prosecuting you until it got the verdict it wanted? What if the government could force you to testify against yourself simply by labeling you a domestic terrorist? What if the government could torture you until you said what the government wanted to hear? What if people running for president actually supported torture? What if the government tortured your children to get to you? What if government judges and government lawyers intimidated juries into convicting the innocent? What if the government could send you to your death and your innocence meant nothing so long as the government's procedures were followed? What if America's prison population, the largest in the world, was a cruel and unusual way for a country to be free? What if half the prison population never harmed anyone but themselves? What if the people had no rights except those the government chose to let them have? What if the states had no rights except to do as the federal government commanded? What if our elected officials didn't really live among us, but instead all had their hearts and homes in Washington, D.C.? What if the government could strip you of your rights because of where your mother was when you were born? What if the income tax was unconstitutional? What if the states were convinced to give up their representation in Congress? What if the government tried to ban you from using a substance in your body that is older than the government itself? What if voting didn't mean anything anymore because both political parties stand for big government? What if the government could write any law, regulate any behavior, and tax any event? The Constitution be damned. What if the government was the reason we don't have a Constitution anymore? What if you could love your country but hate what the government has done to it? What if sometimes to love your country you had to alter or abolish the government? What if Jefferson was right? What if that government is best which governs least? What if I'm right? What if the government is wrong? What if it is dangerous to be right when the government is wrong? What if it is better to perish fighting for freedom than to live as a slave? What if freedom's greatest hour of danger is now?
Hey Charlotte County, this is Charlotte County COPWATCH, and I'd like to thank you for all your years of support through the years. As a result, this channel has grown and allowed me an equity partnership in carmarshal.com. Please take the time to check them out. They help you buy and sell your next car, even have a negotiating tool to save you from the hassle of haggling with multiple dealers. The link is in the description below. Please click and help support and give if you can too through PayPal or Patreon. Thanks again.